So there's some good news and the bad news. I'm recording this. I think it's Christmas Day now. Is it the 25th? It's Christmas morning, but I haven't gone to sleep yet. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, nearly 3 o'clock. I've just had to charge my phone back up. So it looks like I was correct with my. I should have. To know about all this, so many hundreds and there's probably thousands of acts of law. So to know what they all are and that they exist and find them is, if you discover them, obviously if you're doing deep study over a long period of time. I think all David Cameron and Boris Johnson and people like that who are politicians and who have meant to know this and study it. They're meant to have studied it at Eton and university and so forth. They're actually withholding a lot of information that. And I think that they are breaking the law. There's some good news and some bad news. It's kind of bad news for democracy, but good news for us. Well, it's good news for us in a way, but bad news for us in a way. Bad news for democracy, but kind of sort of also good news. Because of finding that tumultuous petitioning act, it was a key that set out some definitions which led me to search for more acts and then draw out a kind of map, plan and model. I still haven't read Edward Fitzgerald's book yet, the Smoking Mirrors, and he's got loads and loads of acts in there, but every time I find something really relevant or important, he's not got it in his book. So it's kind of a bit strange and ridiculous. So I drew out this map and I figured out through using like the solid facts which are logical and correct from the Tumultuous Petitioning Act, I worked out that you definitely can't be prosecuted through the normal courts because they are established from the hundreds courts. And this is my kind of latest revelation for certain. Now, I knew there's quite a lot of law for elections, and you definitely, when you're doing an election, it is called a petition. So you are petitioning for an election. The problem is that the Petitions Committee, as far as I've gathered, and I've asked them, and what we're looking at now is there are certain acts which are like, these are all the government acts now, and I've been led to these from a Petitions Elections 1960 Act, which is a special procedure for prosecuting if petitions elections haven't been run legitimately. You can go to the Supreme Court. Now, it seems quite serious that Supreme Court, ironically, it seems that people don't get prosecuted under common law or imprisoned. They only get fined, but it has to go a very serious, important court, and you have a prosecutor involved. And I've checked to see if you pursue people or whether you pursue like the person or just to pursue the facts of whether the petition was wrong and has to be, reheld or whatever. It seems like people are only fined and not prosecuted under common law, which is quite, to say the seriousness of it and the gravity of it. We're talking about having, the elections of ministers or councillors or, the running of referendums and so forth. This is the same area of that petitions to the House of Commons should be under, because it's the same classification in area of law. Now, the Petitions Committee said that their committee operates on Standing Orders 145A, which is their own judicial powers in a way, but that's not how, they're speaking as if like they're the only people existing, but where do the signatures come from and where do the petitions come from? Like, the Petitions Committee, they're kind of conducting themselves and behaving like we don't exist, like they're just sat in a room in a committee and then the petitions magically appear from nowhere, and the signatures magically appear on them, and they don't know where they come from, but all they know is they're operating on Standing Orders 145A, 3, for, when they can do whatever they want after they've got them. But how do they get there? And, everything that's in connection with it. And then the thing is that they don't even seem to understand or recognise that their own website that they've got, House of Commons website, is using law. It's using publishing law, Town and Country Planning Act, digital devices, and so forth. There are laws in effect, and the staff there don't seem to know what they're doing, or the MP should. Now, I definitely have established, without even looking at any of these additional acts now that this talks about some more acts now, I worked this out with the timeline, and so with this Petitions and Elections 1960 Act, there's a special procedure of prosecution, and you got to get evidence to prove that something wasn't run legitimately, like an election. But what happens about petitions not being run legitimately? It doesn't seem like there's an equivalent to the 1960 Elections Petitions Act for House of Commons petitions casework. It doesn't seem like there is, unless it can be run under the normal other acts. But the thing is this, right? I don't know where to start explaining this, really. Unless the House of Commons will tell me some more acts, it doesn't look like that there is any law, unless there's the odd clause through the other local government and various other acts. There might be the odd clause, but I'm not sure that there is going to be. Now, but the thing is, for sure, an election is regarded as a petition to government. That's for certain. So when you're doing elections, they are petitions. But as for petitions to the House of Commons, I don't know if there is any procedure rules, and I've asked them, and they don't claim there is. But then again, they're playing dumb anyway when it comes. They don't even think that the right to petition, Section 88 Bill of Rights, is in use, or say it is. They're trying to play like Dumber and Dumber, as dumb as possible, but with intent. So. But what we can gather from the Elections Petitions 1960 Act, and then once you follow that line of inquiry, and it opens up all these other acts in this area of law, which I think Boris Johnson and David Cameron should know off by heart from their education, but are reluctant to confess, is that when it's describing everything through these acts that I'm about to tell you about, the Elections and Petitions Act, and then it goes into like local government acts and the Government Act. There's these acts called the Representation of the People Acts, and there are several of them by the looks of it. And then there's some older acts as well. Now, how you get onto these acts, ironically, this is absolutely like another massive coincidence that Jonathan M. Fuller happened to be talking about Gail Bradbrook and her court case and speaking about proceedings, and he was talking about the Crown Prosecutor, and Gail Bradbrook brought up this matter of, the suffragettes, and if it weren't for the suffragettes, women wouldn't even be able to vote at all, and the prosecutor might not even be able to be barrister. Also, the barrister said to Gail Bradbrook that she can't break the law, but it didn't exist. But yet there is. She was in contempt of court because there were rules and procedures. it's the CPS as assisting offenders, so it exists. So it exists where people can break the law if they make arrangements for it. So that does exist, and she was in contempt of court with that statement. Now, ironically, just after that, when that went up on the website the other day. Now, when I follow this Elections and Petitions Act and then found these Representations of the People Act and going back to the early ones, that is actually what Gail Barbara was talking about. It's exactly by complete coincidence. I don't know how much of this Gail knows and how much she doesn't know, but I don't think if she does know, she's not using complicated and detailed points out of it at all. What it's describing is it's basically going to, when they actually make that law so women can vote, and that, either they've got to have a university degree and be educated, or they've got to, be a resident of the country with a property, or renting a property, or living in the country, or with a family or house. And, there's certain people, certain different people, working class or so forth, are treated differently in the Act. But that is the Act. And then the Representation of the People's Act, there's some later ones, and then all of what is being described throughout these acts, it's all about, there's all kinds of things in here, like basically the running of elections, right? But where you're petitioning for an election, right? And, having voting officers, it's got things like the use of a vehicle, but it differentiates, like, there are certain rules that, unless people live in your household, you can't, give people lifts to the polling station. You see, they didn't have the polling stations. They used to come round to people's houses with the polling cards, and they were all stamped. They must have had volunteers, right? And the volunteers must have been doing it for free, unpaid, because elections are meant to be free. I don't know where they got the polling cards from, but the government must have paid for them. That was tax money, right? And then you get the polling stations, and you get the polling cards to give you notice then that there is a poll going on, and you've got to go to the polling station, right? And then there are some rules, because it's something for government, that you don't have to pay. If you send one communication to a person over the matter, you don't have to pay for it to the post office. That's free and open communication, not only legally, lawfully required for function, to serve a function, but you don't actually have to pay monetary, and that is like Royal Mail. But now what happens when Royal Mail's been taken over by private companies? Well, I don't know. I don't see how they could charge for it if there's a law in place. They must have to deliver it for free if it's for that matter. So what about when you're doing petitions to the government? I kind of hypothesized this a while back, but I use the model of, what happens if, return to sender, theoretically you could get the postman to deliver it without paying a fee, but then if the person doesn't pay the fee, then he has to take it back. But the person could manage to just tick a box in time if they get to see it. And then, but apparently they can get it delivered. I can't say how you can tax them, but they've taxed polling cards, but they're commercial ones on the taxation law and act. Now, I don't want to get too confusing with this conversation, but there's a hell of a lot to cover, but I want to try and just summarise. So I really need to make a longer video about this, but I'll try and just brief you, because it's like, Christmas and I'm trying to rest, and what time is it now? 3 o'clock in the morning, 11 minutes past 3. So essentially, once you get onto this trail that we're looking at, it's describing all these things, exactly the type of things that we're doing and that we need to do for petitions to the House of Commons. You're reading it and you're like, well, this is the same, you're doing a petition to the government under the jurisdiction of government. You're getting signatures from the public. You're trying to prove a case, but not to get a candidate elected to represent us permanently. You're trying to get Commons themselves, the committee. The committee are already elected. Well, the committee are made up of people that we've elected, The committee are made up of people that we've elected, and not like judges who get the job themselves. We've actually elected them, and the officers have got a jurisdiction of 145A3. So now the thing is that every single thing in these representation of the people acts, and then once you get into this and open up this can of worms, all the processes and procedures are the exact same type of ones that we need to do for petitions to Parliament, right? But it also covers use of vehicles. Now, but if you are, he's trying to make out that you can't help people out by giving them a lift in your car or hindering them with your car, or also influencing them. You can't promote it on your vehicle, but you can have promotional material. It's a little bit confusing. You see private companies can support or oppose campaigns, but you can't intervene in the process, right? You can't break the process supposedly, but you can help people from your own household, like voting. But ironically, right, this is the irony, the candidate, and this is not even, they're not even elected yet, they're not even an elected councillor or minister, right? Or sorry, MP. I always say MP, minister, but I meant MP, right? Member of Parliament, right? Or councillor. So even a candidate, someone who is petitioning on the petition, named on the petition, who is trying to get elected, they're allowed to use their vehicle to give people lifts to vote for them, right? If they want, and they can, people, or they can appoint someone else to do it, or they can borrow someone's car. But if it's not your house, if it's not from your household, you're not meant to be giving people lifts. Now, how all that kind of really gets sort of resolved a little bit later on, it seemingly would be the fact that they're putting polling stations quite local. I mean, I know 2 polling stations, very close to us, and they're all, schools or churches or, sports grounds or things like that. They're all they're similar. They're all within reasonable walking distance of any given village. Or because that's why you've got your ward. Everywhere's got a ward anyway. So you don't really need a lift unless you can. Why would you wouldn't need your candidate to give you a lift to the polling station, but if it's like literally 100 metres down the road, unless you're an old lady, and then you can telephone them to give you a lift there, or they can send someone, they can appoint someone, but apparently your neighbour can't give you a lift. This is kind of like the strange thing. This is from like the earlier one. But then when we get into it, right, when it comes to there's a hell of a lot here kind of sort of relevant to 38 Degrees and these petition sites, because the thing with 38 Degrees is that we're all donating to these websites and sponsoring and funding campaigns, but when it comes to 38 Degrees, they're using the money with prejudice, and they're helping certain campaigns but not other campaigns, which I think that if that was under these elections and petitions law, it would be illegal. But there's also, and these are some things I wanted to clarify, I'm quite sure that if there was or if there is any acts of law for the petitions committee and how petitions are run, they would be similar or the same to the elections. And this is when it comes down to cheating and legitimacy and so forth. And there's some good news and some bad news about this. The good news is that they can't actually obstruct you or block you. And when you're running a petition on 38 Degrees, that's meant to be your petition. So that is the actual document. They're not allowed to take it down or take it from you or block or hinder it. You're the person who started it. Now, my intuition was correct about if someone else signs it and they, spoil it or forge their signature or do something wrong, that's their at fault, right? And it doesn't affect the petition so much as they're not, the spoiled ones aren't counted basically, and it's not the person who starts its fault. Now when it comes to advertising as well and promotions, you can't forge your copy or make a false copy of the actual petition that people have to sign, right? But as for promotional materials that direct it to it, they're not the actual petition, but they're promotions in connection with it and so forth. It's questionable whether or not they can be taken down and removed, because that is kind of obstructing people from being made aware of it. And my really big claim, when we're looking at the petition and election rules, 1960, and then opening up into this representation of the people and so forth, I would call out some. I know that Dr. Tess Lowry has had this big petition for the World Health Association, and it got debated. It's been debated recently, just a few days ago. But the thing is, right? She had a big banner up in Bristol over the M32, which you can lawfully put there, Class F, through the Town and Country Planning Act, and Bristol Council had no right to tell her to remove it. That is, if that was an election, that would be an offence by the council. It would be a crime, and you could get an investigation for that through that act. But we'd have to go to the Supreme Court, and you can challenge that affects the legitimacy of Tess Lowry's petition, because she got 16,000, for example, something close to that. She got something like 116,000 signatures, but when it gets debated, it gets decided also on the merit of our weight of the signatures as well as the facts. I submitted a petition and writ to the Prime Minister requesting that the 1700 Act of Settlement be included as evidence. I required it to be used, and I wrote to multiple MPs about it, requesting that those matters be raised. But the thing is, it also gets decided on 116,000 signatures. Now, that banner over the M32 in Bristol, that would have promoted to a lot of drivers, people being made aware of it, who could also go and sign. So it could potentially have got a lot more than 116,000 signatures. It could have got 120, possibly even 200,000. And Bristol Council actually spoiled that. And if that was an election, although the thing with elections is that everyone gets a ballot through the letterbox. Everyone gets a ballot through the letterbox. When there's an election on, every elector gets that notice through that it doesn't actually have to be paid for to the post people. And that's telling you, they used to come door to door voluntary, which, and then they've got them at these local places. But the thing is, when you are doing a petition to the government, right, you can get a decision in the council, or you can get a debate in Parliament. It's always possible to get a referendum, which is voting. And in a local referendum, you get ballots through every door. And if you could, and you're entitled to that if you match this 5% of the electorate, right? Now, the thing is that there are a lot of complicated things going on. You can draft up your own rules and your own procedures, which could even be the legal procedures and rules as well, that are going to apply in the referendum if you get it. You can include that in the petition writ. And then also, so because it's in connection with a referendum, when you're petitioning and it can trigger a referendum, and then people are going to get those ballots through and get asked. If they are hindering you getting matching the 5% signatures that you could rightly get, then they're preventing you from actually getting the election or getting the referendum, right? And that's important, because it's not just a debate in Parliament that they decide, then it will be us voting on it like an election or referendum. And if Bristol Council are preventing that and hindering it and stopping it, or anyone else, then they are obstructing a referendum, well, not an election, but a referendum, which is the referendum that is a lot more equal to an election, if not more important. And you definitely do get a notification about a referendum. So now, I think that you see, even if there isn't a specific procedure rules like the petition elections rules 1960 in effect with the petitions committee, still the petitions committee have got standing orders 145A3, which you should ask them to compel Bristol Council to put the banner back up. Why would you need to go to the Supreme Court? It's quite interesting, this Supreme Court business, which it is, but you can be fined. But they also established that it was illegitimate and must be run again or whatever. But it definitely isn't 38 Degrees making that decision, and they don't have the authority to make the decision or obstruct it. That's for sure. Now, the problem is that the Petitions Committee aren't doing that, but they are a jurisdiction. The thing is, you don't need to go to the Supreme Court because the committee are already in Parliament. And they've already got a jurisdictive authority to do certain things. They check signatures anyway, but they're not seeming to want to help on request when things aren't being done correctly or things are being obstructed, like with elections and referendums. You see, they should compel Bristol Council to, and the thing is, really, you can have an investigate. Well, they are an investigative body, the House of Commons Petitions Committee. They're doing investigations, but who investigates them if they're not running it properly? Like the council, whatever, if a petition, so you can actually have them investigated. Well, it is the High Court. Well, the Supreme Court, if you complain about judges, it goes to the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office. It is for all of it, investigations for the whole thing. So that's in the Royal Courts of Justice. So I'm right to say you can complain to the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office about the House of Commons Committee. Now, they might have to refer it to the Select Committee for Privileges or the Health Service Ombudsman, which we could do, but why do that if, you've got a Judicial Conduct Investigations Office? Because after all, Parliament, even the Lords, many of them are judges, and that's why you've got the Lord Chief Justice in the Judicial Investigations Office, right? So, with that, if the Petitions Committee are claiming that they can't do anything and lying and saying they haven't got any powers or refusing to use them, then that's grounds, I think, to complain them into the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office, because they've got avenues, whether it's the Lord Chief Justice through Parliament or Privileges Committee and so forth, where they can have actions. So the thing is, Tess Lowry's petition, it's not a local petition, it's a national one. That could have, it might have ended up getting 3 million signatures, and they might have had to have a referendum in England over it, not a debate in Parliament. And if Bristol Council have obstructed that, because on the M32, you could get a hell of a lot of signatures, you actually, you could actually, there are grounds that you might have to have them rerun the petition, like redo it on that grounds. Because to have to redo an elect, because on the election petitions, it's for legitimising it. Which signatures are valid, which signatures aren't valid. Was there any fraud or corruption and so forth? Was it hindered, or did someone hinder it? Because there were quite a few offences. Persons, driving, giving people lifts there to help them out, even though rarely happens now because most people walk there. And your MP can give you a lift or appoint someone, but these are what the rules are. These are the original ones, though. I'm just kind of setting out some kind of general. This is what it says in there. But who would do the thing is, it's meant to be a Crown prosecutor who would take this to the Supreme Court. But then again, if it's a Judicial Conduct Investigations Office, obviously they deal with all that side of it. If it's the Petitions Committee failure, or if the Petitions Committee refuse, you could ask the Petitions Committee that you want the petition reopened to collect more signatures, because the 6 months wasn't long enough, or there was something gone wrong, so you want another 6 months, right? You could actually have it reopened if all the signatures, depending on what judgment is. This is the thing. You could have the judgment that, if it was hindered from collecting signatures within the 6 months because Bristol Council said to take an advertisement down, then, which was appealing to witnesses to sign it, then this is the thing. Should it have been reopened? And why didn't the Petitions Committee, House of Commons Committee, tell them to put it back up again and use powers? This is the thing. Now, there's some other things as well. Firstly, it sets out use of vehicles in connection with petitions, and the candidate, the person who is bringing the case for themselves to be elected and is named on the petition, they have got certain privileges when it comes to driving and the law. And I'm quite certain that there are also, in the earlier driving acts, and currently you've got special reasons. And I would suggest special reasons can be used in that. Why? Because that is where you can insert an enactment, because you're using the enactment in it. So that is where the enactment applies, like with the use of the Class F materials. It does include the vehicle and the candidate. Now, this is the thing. There aren't any rules for that for doing normal petitions to government. But there are some other things that I really should make you aware of. And the similar, I'm not saying exactly the same, but it has to apply to petitions, particularly when they can trigger a referendum. And that is that you're not meant, if you're on the way to the polling station, you're not meant to be giving other people lifts or having material that persuades people to vote for or against certain parties, other persons. But the candidate can give people a lift there, or you can borrow, and you can borrow someone's car. You'll have to read it. But when it comes to the actual banners and signs and things like that, that's to get there on the day of vote, to get there when you're voting, right? This is a bit complicated in your head, right? So, like, when you're going around and promoting a cause, either opposing it or supporting it, you can have promotional display if you are you're a candidate on the vehicle, and the vehicle becomes designated for use, right? The vehicle is officially designated for use for the campaign when you display give notice on the vehicle, which is effectively, like those trade plates when you're, the trade plates that you use when, like if you've seen people outside of the motorway, they're like that. Well, do you register them with government? Well, the thing is, your petition is registered with the government, and it's got a name and a number, and you display that. So the thing is that, what about with Stop ULEZ? People are opposing the Stop ULEZ and so forth. Now, only certain people have registered a petition, and the people who are voting to sign it, I don't know whether they are allowed to have the material on their vehicle or not. But this is then you get into the difference between the petitions and an election itself, or a referendum itself, or trying to get it. Because in order to, the thing is, the government, when you're doing a normal petition and trying to collect signatures, people don't know about it, so you've got to inform them of it, and the government aren't going to help you. In the election, they are notifying every single person, so then you're not allowed to influence them because they already know and they want to make their own decision up unless you are a candidate. With the petition, normal standard petitions, you have to share them and do adverts and promo so people can discover it, or they won't even know about it. And then if you do achieve this 5% or get enough for a debate, then the council are going to tell everyone about it anyway, and then they can make their own mind up, right? And I think the person who registered the petition can continue to promote it, but I'm sure I'm quite certain that at least the person who drafted the petition and filed it with government, they are in the same position as a candidate for election, and they can promote and use the vehicle for that casework purpose and advertise it. Now, the thing is, you can have multiple people, they can sign your petition, but they can also do their own petition, and all petitions have to be amalgamated and can be amalgamated. Ironically, they could all do their own petition to government, but the House of Commons Petitions Committee is starting to turn them down and saying, oh, there's already a petition. But if you've already got your own petition in your own name, then you are the equivalent of the candidate, or whether you sign another one, right? So then you could have your own car with your own petition number on it, but they all get amalgamated together anyway, right? So I'm starting to think that for Stop ULEZ, I'm starting to wonder if people, like they've all done this thing where they register their car to Sadiq Khan, so the vehicle's registered to Sadiq Khan, and then, apparently they don't have to pay the fee or something. Well, I'm quite certain that if every single person registers a petition with the petitions committee, their own petition at least, but then they've all got to be amalgamated together anyway, and they've got their own petition number, and they're driving around, doing casework promoting that petition, I'm quite certain they won't have to pay the fee. It's a little bit like this trick they've done with registering their car owner document to Sadiq Khan on the logbook, but I don't know why they just didn't get the register a petition with the petitions committee. Technically, there's no rule under standing orders where people can't have petitions on the same thing, and in fact, they're meant to be amalgamated, particularly under the Local Governments Act. So, and the 2011 ones, well, all of them basically. So, I don't think, if you might not, you might be, because it's a government fee, and if you're using it for casework, I don't think you'd have to pay it, really, that charge, I'm sure. If the rules are similar to this, but also theoretically, I think that you don't have to pay we definitely don't have to pay tax on leaflets and advertising and campaign material. That's for sure. But we've been getting charged tax, so we need to claim some tax back. And also, these companies and businesses who are printing these things need to be told that, they're printing handbills and small adverts, and even the newspaper adverts, we're being charged tax on, which we shouldn't. if you do achieve the election or referendum, then the poll cards which the council issue don't have to be paid for. But it also said you can send one communication as well over a matter. I think that it's the candidate who can do it, not everyone. But if everyone registered the same petition, which can be amalgamated together, then theoretically, I can't see how if everyone registered a petition with the petitions committee and got their own petition number, and then they theoretically, but the thing is, if it's a local petition, there's only going to be whatever people. But I don't know if you. It says one communication. I don't know if you could get petition cards printed up and get Royal Mail to deliver one to every person in the village. Although you could volunteer yourself and go door to door. It's looking like questionable to ask the this is the thing. When you ask the petitions committee where's the legislation and rules for it, they say there aren't any. But this is what it's like for similar. But some of these have to be applicable. I know they're applicable because of the Tumultuous Petitioning Act. Now, we'll get on to the other things. I don't want this to be an hour long, and it's gotten to 41 minutes already now. So, I said there was some good news and some bad news. Well, the thing is, right, it's absolutely clear in this act that for petitions, election, that anyone who does anything naughty, like, fraud or ballot offences or anything like that, to do with like illegitimate practices, they can't be prosecuted by common law. They can't be prosecuted by common law. There is they are guilty. There is an offence, but they're not prosecuted by common law, and that absolutely confirms and affirms what I found for the Tumultuous Petitioning Act for normal petitions to the government, that it's not the hundreds which become the county courts and magistrates courts which are doing common law. So I'm right about that. I was right about that, and this is absolutely confirming to that. But the thing is, you got to go to the High Court if there's any issues. But this is the bad news. Well, it's good news and bad news. That you only get fined. Now, this is a little bit like, when this is like, the Crooked House in Birmingham pub that got demolished and they didn't have the right to demolish it. And, the thing is, if you breach planning, if someone breaches planning, apparently they only get fined. Now, why aren't we prosecuting them through the criminal courts? This is what we've been saying when they, committed, giving a false account of their planning. Well, it's because I think that it's because they've made a planning application case to the council, and they're bringing a case to the government. And it's a shame that they do actually, according to this, it seems like they can't be prosecuted with an offence. But the good news is that also we're right about Gail Bradbrook and Extinction Rebellion. They also can't be prosecuted by common law. I think they can be fined though for the damage, but in the Supreme Court. So all these prosecutions I don't think are lawful. Well, I know they're not lawful. Why would you go all the way to the Supreme Court and only just get fines? I don't know. But ironically, this is the thing. Now, it's true that, if another person, signs wrong or spoils their signatures, then they themselves, their signature's not counted, or any signatures on there which aren't valid aren't counted. Now, do you use a special legal procedure and challenge, the legitimacy of the petition? Well, the petitions committee automatically, any information or data that's not right or not correct or not legitimate, they omit it anyway, right? You don't have the petition rerun usually. You usually don't hand it until you've got as many signatures as you want. But the thing is, no other party is allowed to intervene or hinder that process, which includes 38 degrees because they're not a court. 38 Degrees aren't a court, and I'm right about that, and they're not allowed to intervene. And also, there's some questions about the communications you're sending, and there's some questions about them checking and intervening in private communications, but also using the money that they're taking, kind of like using it as they deem fit. They're assisting and aiding selective petitions. You know, you wouldn't want it to be an election where, you know, basically those rules, like I said, you know, the candidate can give people lifts, but no other people can unless they're from the same household, and not allowed to advertise, influence the electors on the way to the polling station, voting and so forth. But, you know, that is after you've done a petition and collected all the signatures that's triggered it. You know, if it's a referendum, you know, and you're trying to make people aware of it, you know. So now the thing is, this is the worst news out of it, really. The worst news out of it is that it seems that local councils, even when it comes to planning applications, and, you know, like council officers who go, you know, like, you know, they say, have councils got immunity or not? You know, if you know, a council planning inspector headbutts someone, is he guilty of an offence? You know, this is the thing. Or if he smashes a window, it depends if it's a council window or not. I don't know. He might just get sacked. He might get prosecuted, whatever. But it seems like if he at least, you know, if he cheats in the planning application, you know, cheats the process, like not giving enough notice so people can't be aware of it, or if there's something going on, apparently, you know, it seems that they can't be prosecuted by common law from what I've read so far in this. They can be fined, and obviously they might get sacked by the monitoring officer or whatever. That's the bad news, which means that it's highly after watching all these Vobes videos recently and all these other things and the corrupt practices with the courts and the council tax and all the rest of it, and the petitions committee being corrupt as well, it seems like they're not to be prosecuted at common law. And it seems like you can get the whole process redone or rerun, possibly even for building and planning. You know, make them have to redo it all, or it being illegitimised. But the persons involved are guilty of an offence, but not common law, supposedly in the High Court, and they only get fined. Now, that means that they've got big balls and they've got big courage, and I think that it's led to a lot of corruption, particularly with planning officers who are pro, you know, care traffic and, you know, pro contract with these big companies who are involved in it, and then they don't put notices out, and then they take notices down, and they just lie in the council chamber, and they get what they want out of it, and there's a lot of, like, you know, demolishing things when they shouldn't demolish it and so forth. They're basically having to pay fines that they're not bothered about paying these fines, really, and they're getting away with the corrupt. They're getting their buildings they want, and they're doing what they want to do, and they're just paying for it by fines, really. That's if you can call them out on it. That's the bad news, which means that it's highly likely, from what I've seen, that there's a very, very, very deep-rooted and widespread cheating and corruption all throughout the whole country in the local councils, through building and planning, through the elections and voting. Like with George Galloway, the council took his election material down. But then again, he's the person who, he's the candidate. They took his notices down, but he is the candidate, and he can even give people a lift there. And all of them put material up. It doesn't say how much material you can and can't put up. If you can't put any material up at all, then, you know, but it seems like it's meant to be the candidate who puts the material up and so forth. And, you know, their vehicle, they've got to register it. They can appoint someone as well. But we're not meant to influence each other, apparently, when the election's on. But the petition is to get the referendum or election, remember, and you need to let people aware of it because the government aren't going to pay for it, because it's your own case, your own cause. That's the main part, trying to get people interested in it. But I'm not sure if you could. I'm not sure if you have to pay for postage, or you can send one communication. I don't know. Maybe that's only for elections and petitions. I know we don't pay VAT on it. That's for certain. So there's some intricacies now. The thing with car, can we put notices up to say, vote for Khan or not? Now the thing is, if it's a petition for Stop ULEZ, that also why do you want to stop ULEZ? Because Khan is the mayor and it's him who's doing it, and the petition is to the House of Commons. Then that is an interesting twist on it. But for certain, you can't forge the actual petition or any official petition and pretend that it's official when it's not, which basically means that you can't get someone to sign it when that's not it, basically. But you can do adverts and promo for it as long as they're just letting people know about it, where it is, not letting people not know where it isn't, or misleading them or misdirecting them. So there's a few other things as well. Oh yeah, I better not forget this. So there's a clause in this Representations of the People Act, which covers the broadcast about all elections and referendums or any matters to do with them, when you're actually not allowed to. You're not allowed to affect the electors or influence them. Anyone, right? So that would be Rees-Mogg, because he's got nothing to do with whether it's GB News or not. It's a fact that it's the topic of discussion. It's not even him. He's talking about matters that he is having. He's got an opinion, basically. He has an opinion, and if he discusses elections and referendums and goes on to that subject, or it could be interpreted as having an opinion on those and it affecting people, then he can't be on. He's not meant to be on there, right? Now, for a petition, I don't know whether you can influence people or not, but an advertisement makes people aware of it. Now the person who's running the petition can advertise it. I'm not too sure about other people or whether it's, but Parliament are giving directions from their petition committee in the Standing Orders 145 to share this petition, make people aware of it. So according to that, you can do promotional material and ask people to support it, because sharing is asking people to support it. That's for sure. And you can support or oppose, but it can't actually pretend to be the actual document. It's different with elections and referendums because everyone is given notice anyway by default. So I'm pretty sure that confirms that Mogg can't really be talking. When you're a member of the House of Commons, you're self-promoting by your presence, really, as a presenter. You're getting a favourable. You're becoming favourable. You yourself and your opinions, let's say. Rees-Mogg and Rees-Mogg's opinions are becoming likeable and favourable to the public. Well, that's it. And, and his party, that's why they're not meant to present on there. And that's why there are various acts. I don't think that Ofcom have taken into account the Representation of the People Act and that clause in this as well. And I think that smashes it, really. So if there aren't any procedure rules or laws through this Representations of the People Act or Local Governments Act that explicitly and clearly apply to running petitions, but something applies to them because they exist. But what does apply to them? Like, is there at least one thing that applies? Well, we know the Bill of Rights applies, right? So you got to have that, which they're ignoring. And we know that for certain, when you're using the right to petition, the Town and Country Planning Act applies. You can have that. But all these other acts apply as well in elections and referendums through Class E, which don't necessarily apply to Class F. And then there are other acts to do with police. The Representation of the People Act will apply to digital devices when it is a broadcast. Advertisements and promotions. Well, that enactment would make, if you're using Class F, the right to petition, that you can't be able to any commitments and so forth. Class E, which is for elections and referendums, so that actually says that you can't broadcast it on digital devices. You can't. But that's a little bit different to Class F now, where you have to share it, you need to share it, and you're given direction to share it by Parliament, by 145A. You need to make people aware of it so you can have the referendum, and then so they can get the polling card, and then they're not allowed to be influenced in it. But the thing is, we've got all these... it's bedlam now because we've got this Reclaim the Media. These political parties have all got channels and they're all wanting to get elected and they're all influencing the public, in voting. And that's going to affect them when it's on. So it's a little bit messed up, really, the invention of YouTube. And then worse than that, YouTube and 38 Degrees, Paul Groves, they've published a video about, intervening, influencing people in elections. They're saying that you can, support or oppose elections, but then they're saying you can intervene or obstruct the process. Well, that's wrong, according to this, because according to this, in a petition you can share it, and you can, make people aware of it and so forth to get the election or referendum. But the intervention aspect of it, intervening in elections, is strange because in America, under, these non-profit entities can support, or under 501c3 in America, a non-profit can support or oppose any campaign. But the thing is, if you've got a campaign, it's non-profit, so you can support or oppose. I don't know whether that's affecting other people or not. He says they can support or oppose it themselves, right? But they can't intervene in the process. Now, the ironic thing is, though, you're not meant to be broadcasting it or influencing people on the way to polling stations. I think YouTube are pushing it myself when it comes to elections and referendums, because according to these acts, you can't do that. What date is this? We might need to get to the revised version, but I'm kind of sounding a bit tenuous now, but this is fact that all those local government acts that say, ministers and so forth, not supposed to be on the radio and presenting and influencing people, it's based on this. It's literally, it's like, all right, they've got this and they've included it in that. Not word for word, but it's saying the same thing. Which means it's not just a Minister of the Crown. It means that it could be an MP as well. This is 1948, so it could be updated. But I've just got to this stage at this point, and I need to read the other parts. So you know. So there are some clauses on driving and use of vehicles, and actually having. You can have something that's connected to a petition for election or referendum that uses a vehicle. It's the person who has registered and brought the cause or campaign, and they display something on a vehicle, and that vehicle therefore is officially recognised as being used for that purpose. And also, there are certain broadcasting restrictions when it comes to the actual elections and referendums, that's why you've got Class E and F in the advertising part of it, separate, because there's some slightly different conditions. And then there's the fact that apparently you can't be prosecuted by common law, unfortunately, for us, because, well, it's good. This is brilliant, really. We should be singing and dancing about this for, Gail Bradbrook. I don't know to what extent it covers you. Well, surely if you are, surely if you headbutt someone, right, or steal some bread, wouldn't you think that fraud or an academic crime, like this, what do you call it, embezzling, all these very serious academic crimes, right? Wouldn't you thought they're a lot more serious than these brigand offences or whatever, street offences? So it'd be interesting that they're not prosecuted by common law. And they get it makes offences, but they've got to go through the Supreme Court, but they only get fined. They'll likely get sacked as well. But it goes to show that obviously, it will also, evidence will be given that if it renders the process void or illegitimate, it needs to be run again or whatever. Now, what about, spoiled ballots, dodgy signatures and so forth? If it's not your fault if someone else did it, well, you're not liable. It doesn't end the process. And the thing is, the office that's checking them, you don't need an investigation into, legitimise it when that's their job to check whether it's legitimate or not. Right? And then the ones that aren't legitimate, they'd exclude. So they've already checked it. What you're doing is you're checking their checking. After the whole thing's been done and purported to be done legitimate, you can challenge it, right? Or any other offences and so forth. This is why I think there's a case against Bristol Council for removing that banner of Tess Lowry's, because, she could have had enough for a referendum in England. She might have got 3 million signatures, and she could have done, and she could have had a referendum with everyone over it, without even having the ministers debate it if she wanted to. But then again, the Act of Settlement 1700 final chapters meant to be included. So there's a bit of question now whether or not I'll just have to read it again and read the updated one, whether or not we're allowed to actually influence people in voting. Or whether only the candidate, like Tracy Brabin is promoting her own campaign and she pops up on YouTube. I'm not sure whether we can tell people to not vote for someone or support it, but you have to, for petitions, you have to share it, because what you're doing is you're pursuing that process whereby everyone is asked, and then people can't influence people, although the media are influencing people like hell. I don't know how you can police that anymore. It's just gone, they're talking about it influencing. They're always influencing people. They were meant to be professional, weren't they? The BBC was supposed to be trained and impartial and meant to do it in a manner whereby it doesn't. But this is the thing with the question in Rees-Mogg. But this is the thing. Rees-Mogg is not a BBC presenter who is meant to be impartial or politically exposed or whatever they want to call it now. Mogg is the known and acknowledged, even advertised MP, Member of Parliament for the Conservative Party. And, he's got a possibility of running for election again if he suddenly whimsical decides that he wants to. And he's gaining a he's gaining supporters, let's so to say, an advantage of a private broadcasting company, which, according to this act, you can't do that. You can't do that because what you're doing is you're getting favourability with an advantage, and that is why you can't, in the car, you're not allowed to give people lifts there if it's not a member of your household. There's a certain way. I think you can borrow a car, but you've got to go about it a certain way. I've only just found this act, so I'm just kind of briefing you, and it's not the briefest brief because it's over an hour, but I'm just summing up. So, and I don't really want to have to. I don't want to have to learn all these acts. When you're basically doing something, you just want to focus on doing that. We're getting distracted by. All this is meant to be established and set out. And this is why the Crown prosecutors and the police are being a bit of a pain, because they're distracting and diverting efforts and money, legal expenses, defence, and so forth. When really we're not supposed to be prosecuting common law. I can't see how. Well, you can't be prosecuting common law because it says in the Tumultuous Petitioning Act you're not to use the hundreds courts, which is a town court, and you had like the King's Bench and like the assizes, which is now, that's all higher up, and we get into this is like this process of challenging it or challenging stuff to do it. I guess you might say that it's come to my attention now that if someone from the council, what happens if a council's, assessment officer is writing an evaluation of, the village for a planning application order and the appearance of a village in connection with proceedings brought for application of planning order, and he writes a false statement. He says that there's no this village. It could be a beautiful village with a distinct character in a beautiful countryside spot which needs to be preserved, and he could write a false statement out and lie about that, and it could literally affect the council decision. But yet he can only be fined and not prosecuting common law for giving false statement or fraud. But apparently he can be fined, and I think that is sort of a way. I guess it's an immunity. They failed to put up adequate notices. It says one or more notices should be required. Well, that means you can prosecute them. You can say, look, there wasn't adequate notices because I wasn't giving notice. I was adequate, when I wasn't giving notice. If people in your house are for it and you're against it, what happens if they don't tell you about it, So there's that. They can be prosecuted under that. And the whole thing can be delegitimised and have to be redone. Now, councils say that, once a planning order's been made, that's it. Well, you can say you've had an election and that's it. But this is the thing, these are special procedures to challenge it. So you can challenge the council, and so forth. The thing is, it's meant to be, if you call it, if you say, right, this is corrupt, well, you report it to the police, or you report it to the Crown Prosecution Service, the prosecutor, it's not meant, when it's corruption in government, you're not meant to do it out of your own money, I don't think, because that's we were meant to have prosecutors for this, corrupt practices, but unfortunately prosecutors are, like Keir Starmer supporters and so forth, political party affiliated, unfortunately. Now, what happens if, a council officer or someone working in connection with the council, have they got, what happens if they break a window? The ironic thing is that when it's council property or public arena, the council can, crack nails and paint walls as it fancies, because it's the council authority, Yeah, we're trying to oppose it in something that it wants to do, but we don't want it to do, right? And if we can't put things up, if they're taking them down, and Bristol Council saying take them down, you can't oppose it. So you need that Class F right to petition to obtain your. Through that, you then get onto Class E, which is elections and referendums, but you're in pursuit of them in connection with it. It's absolutely for certain now. The good news is, and this is probably the biggest thing, that you can't be prosecuted by common law. I know that now because of that hundreds courts and the tumultuous act, and this petition's elections. Now, what extent does it cover? Well, you've got people demolishing entire buildings and only getting away with a fine. You've got corrupt planning officers who are lying about, they're not acting to protect our village honestly, and they're siding with contractors and developers who've got financial gain and wanting to build houses. When you get, 100 people objecting, and so forth, our council's meant to be going bankrupt, but it's just past a massive cultural heart project. I don't know it's affording that if it's going bankrupt. I really do believe now that, the thing is, we're getting accused by Parliament of, apparently we're not trustworthy, we don't deserve immunity, we don't deserve rights, we don't deserve, all this, because of the chaos it could cause, with Extinction Rebellion or Just Stop Oil or Stop ULEZ. But yet, what we find is that the council and their agents working under their directions when they're going out doing things, we find out that they have got immunities, and they're the ones who have been abused. Those who we would trust and elect are the ones who, and this is what's caused all our arguments and problems and the demise of our neighbourhoods and the diets and all this gross greed and excess being erected around us, causing, sperm count dropping on all this. Building and planning corruption, demolition of buildings without permission, God knows when it comes into illegal road signage being placed. They have been abusing their authority, and yet they have denied us of these same powers when we lawfully and legitimately pursue the same and take up the same, right? And we don't even have a set of procedure rules. I don't think they wanted to give us any. If you're investigating them or bringing a case, you see, the thing is, if you think what one of those processes is wrong, or you're objecting to something, when you object, if the council assessment officer, and planning is, committing fraud, when it comes to, planning applications and so forth, or elections, counting and on all these things, then, who's going to call it? And are you going to investigate them if the police won't? And then you're onto something then, because then you're using some law, and what happens if you can't get legal action, if you can't afford it, or if the police or prosecutors won't do it? The prosecutors are meant to actually pursue these things, You got these monitoring officers in the council who are meant to do all these things, but you never get anywhere with them when you complain, They just knock it back. So I know the vehicle can be used if you attach a person who brings a case, which is an official case to any part of the government, a claimant. They can use a vehicle to travel if they own one, and if they put a notice on it, giving a notice of that, because it's in here. And if that applies for the candidate in an election, then surely it applies to the person who drafts up a petition. What I don't like is the Secretary of State for Transport and the Petitions Committee messing people around with these local referendums backwards and forwards between local council and Parliament, when it's the Secretary of State ultimately that decides. And when you've exceeded these, you see, you can ask for an investigation for that. Well, if you think the process has been done illegitimately, well, the thing is that there's an entitlement to a local referendum. And if you don't get one, then, if they don't give you one, you can have an investigation as to why there wasn't one. Did you ask for one? Well, apparently, if you reach this 5%, supposedly you would get one. That's what the rules are meant to be. And a lot of those acts, it's the same thing copied across, copied over. Where it goes to the Supreme Court and say, why isn't the Secretary of State for Transport giving us a local referendum? And I don't see why you have to pay for that out of your own money, because it's everyone's voting on it. Everyone signed the petition. We all signed it. It's not private. It's not private litigation. For your own house. When it's not for a local referendum eligibility, surely. Now, if you say no, it has to be the referendum itself or the election itself that could be taken to the Supreme Court. Surely the petition, which should be eligible, well, that act covers the lane of if a petition is presented. If it's presented, so at the point it brings into it at the point that it's presented. So from the Local Government Act and the Petitions Elections 2011, and also in the Inquiries Act as well, it says should it appear to a minister. So that's point of entry. That's like handing it in, and on the e-petition site, you don't need to hand it in because it's already on there running. It should appear to them as it's progressing. To me, it looks like as you hand it, because it raises the petition for the referendums and elections as you hand it in. It says it always as it appears. Here is a petition, for this or that. It doesn't say about, going about proceedings for that. So, Parliament have claimed, House of Commons Committee have claimed there aren't any legislations or acts, Now, if there are some legislation, acts or clauses, in law that, that do apply to the, us going about business, collecting petition signatures and all of the things that a candidate is covered by in this Representation of the People Act, and ironically, when you filed a petition with the government, you are representing the people, and what the irony of that is that if everyone signs it, you could say, well, they aren't the registered person who started it, but they've all got a right to do that as well, and then amalgamate them. Also, have their own number, So surely it would make sense to use the same number. I really don't know, but what I do know for certain is that we're not prosecuted at common law, and that is very, very clear now. That is good and bad, because in a way we should not. I think that hopefully when this all gets done, I don't think Gail Bradbrook or any of the Extinction Rebellion people, who at least in the magistrates' courts have been prosecuted. But the bad thing is, what is the current state of our government? And this is the thing, is that the reason why if you demolish a house and you don't have a right, you only get a fine and not prosecuted for, an offence? And, they should know that. David Cameron should have known that. Boris Johnson should have known that. And they've stood by while people have been getting arrested. And Sunak tried to conjure up all these laws and so forth, tried to make these acts, but he's making laws like, you can't lock onto anything, but a bike locks onto something, and what happens if you need to use a bike to ride around for the petition and lock it up, but you're not allowed to lock yourself onto it. But you know, you got those shoes that have, you know, like stirrups that lock on to a bike. There's some, you know, the main thing with all the petitioning issue is that the police, it's all, the arguments are all about, you know, being charged, people getting charged for things, and you're not meant to be charged through the courts. It doesn't say, you know, you can get, it's not meant to be the Supreme Court, you know, according to this, or it would look like it, if at all. So, what activities does it cover? Well, this is the thing. When I give an example of, you know, what if someone's doing something for the council and going around, you know, appointed by a candidate for election for the council, and they go headbutt someone, is that really to do with the campaign? Well, the thing is, this is where you bring other acts in that are compatible and you are also using, which is like the Town and Country Planning Act. Because, you know, when Gail, you know, you can't just say, oh, Gail headbutted someone, or, you know, Roger Hallam punched someone, or, you know, because the thing is, right, when Extinction Rebellion are doing something, they're doing it as they're making a representation and a promotion, and they're broadcasting it, or you know, it's to compel the public to support the campaign, so they can try and get a referendum on it, you know, or even you know, whatever. So, you know, and they are filming and broadcasting it, you know. Apparently it's not crime or common law, you know. Apparently it's fines. So, you know, that's even if it is a fine or not, you know, a lot of these places are insured. But if there aren't any acts for the House of Commons petitions, you know, I don't think the House of Commons can act like a whip and, you know, prosecute them still, or tell the police to prosecute them, or bring an injunction. You know, they brought an injunction against Insulate Britain, didn't they? I don't know whether that was through the Supreme Court or just the High Court. That's questionable as well. But they say, well, what about what we're going to do about all these people doing all these things? I'm not sure. I don't, you know, it isn't an election and it isn't a referendum, but you're in pursuit of it. So the police can't intervene in elections and referendums. I don't know if the police can kind of like, you know, sort of, you know, site management or something, you know, just keeping the peace to an extent, but without common law charges. I'm not sure. You go look at Hillsborough, everyone got crushed to death, and that was just a misfortune, you know. And that was poor site management from the police. You'd have thought after all the training and insights after that, they would be expert at site management. You'd have thought if you could handle Hillsborough or been through Hillsborough and failed, and, you know, you had to retrain, you'd have thought that when you come out of that training, you know, you would be able to, you know, you would think that a little Extinction Rebellion or Just Stop Oil or Insulate Britain, a couple of people sat in a road, would be a piece of cake, so to say. You know, particularly after they've meant to have been through the highest grade quality of, you know, police car training, hot pursuit training in police cars. They've got all the qualifications, the medals, the training. You're like fucking SAS, fucking ninja. Oh yeah, you know, it's a PC fucking, you know, Boyle. You know, I'm trained to race around Bradford in this car all night at 100 mile an hour. You know what Jonathan Fuller was saying? So, you know, apparently he can handle anything on the road, and there's no danger. You know, he laughs in the fear of danger, you know. So if these police officers are a specially trained unit, you know, they just walk around town, there's a football match on and no one's actually done any crime. They've just got a presence there. They're walking around on horses just to assume the authority, you know. No one's actually committed an offence. They're just there ready, ready to the presence of the police force. This is it. So, and that's what they've been doing a lot of the time with Extinction Rebellion when those events happened. But unfortunately, they arrested people and took them away, which is wrong, as far as I can see from these acts. So this is like my Christmas message. I don't know where I'm going to put it because I haven't absolutely read every word because I'm not well at the moment. But I've read enough to I know for certain that we're not to be prosecuted by common law, and I'd already worked that out before reading this. But this, even it's absolutely certain. I know that it's suggesting that if you have a sign on a vehicle and it's for some sort of petition for a legitimate government process, whether it's criminal investigation, whether it's a civil case, or whether it is an election petition, or whether it is petition to the House of Commons, and you got a notice on your car, he's officially declared for that. But is there anything in law, in the other laws? Well, there actually was. You got special reasons, but now they've only got it on things like traffic lights. But he's meant to be on dangerous driving. Not it didn't. I don't think special reasons was on speed, but it is if you're policing. Now the thing is, you can be doing an investigation for criminal matters, but for a public inquiry, who can refer matters to the High Court. So you can. The thing with the House of Commons there are various different natures of petition case, depending on what area of law it is. You see, for civil matters, you see, getting rid of, what happens if you want to get rid of the speed cameras and test them out to gather evidence? That's an investigation, but you're not prosecuting anyone. You say, well, get rid of them. We're not prosecuting anyone, right? Okay, they've been misused. If the cameras have been, abused or misused in the road signage, but say like, well, I think this equipment's a load of rubbish anyway. I'll test it out and get some evidence, and I don't be prosecuting at common law for it, and it's just for evidence in a case to government that we don't want this. That's not criminal, but it's we don't want it. Or we want the law changed on its use or whatever. Who'd you get permission from? This is the thing. One thing's clear. It doesn't seem like you have to get permission from the House of Commons committee under 145(3) standing order to use that vehicle and declare it for that purpose, not through this act here. This act gives the power. You don't get permission from a person. You do, if, when the councils take it, well, when the council's taking things down, well, that's governed by, you shouldn't need to ask the House of Commons Petitions Committee to use Standing Order 145(3) to, requisite the banner for Bristol Council, because the Town and Country Planning Act, it tells them not to take it down, both of them. So, but if that goes on to cause, loss of signatures and fails the petition, they're obstructing the due process, Now, if there is no procedure rules, one can only assume that if Bristol Council failed that petition, you could have a case to the Supreme Court and say, we want the petition reopened, or we want another 6 months on it, or we want it, redone, or we want Bristol Council fined, want the staff sacked by the monitoring officer, sacked, fined, whatever. Not many of these, I from all my evidence, I think the council are trying to make out that we're the bad people, that it's us, we're bad, the public, we're rebellious, we're thieves, vagabonds, criminals, but I think that these corporate entities, council highways, planning, possibly even the election process, look at George Galloway. I mean, BBC News, that Martina Croxtell interviewed Galloway and showed him in a very She's meant to be impartial, but she was like going, oh, what are you even coming from election for? You're not from this area. You're not from this area. Why should anyone vote for you? Well, she was quite harsh on him, and I thought that Galloway was already an MP in Bradford. He's been a West Yorkshire MP. So, why was Croxtall saying, like, oh, what the hell are you doing running for a councillor in Batley Spen, even though it's the last time anybody ever will be that councillor because he's going to shut down. He went to get the foot in the door, but he ended up doing his own programme instead because they kind of rubbished him. You see, that's a broadcast. The BBC weren't impartial in that. She was literally trying to she was making out, well, that you could put a question, okay, then, why should anyone vote for you? But you can't say, you've got nothing to do with this area. If you're the BBC and you say, ask the question, okay, then, tell us, why should people vote for you? What reasons do you think they should vote for you? That's the question. But when you make a statement saying, why should anyone vote for you, George Galloway? You haven't got anything to do with this area, but you say, hello, Croxtall, I was the MP for Bradford's, for, Albany over years in the Labour government. Why are you giving a false statement that, I've got nothing to do with this area? That's not BBC impartiality. So, that literally affected the outcome of his own election. Even though it was the last time that Ward was going to be there because they were closing it down. And also the council took some of his material down. He's the candidate. He can put material up, or else no one can. There's nothing to say how much volume you can put or not. That's another corrupt thing practiced by the council. Now, Galloway, according to all these acts of law, Representation of the People Act, he could have had the whole thing prosecuted at the Supreme Court by a prosecutor, not a private, because he's a candidate, he's on the ballot, right? So why haven't you got a prosecutor? Why haven't you got a prosecutor, a Crown prosecutor, having to redo the whole thing? Well, that was the last time there was going to be a candidate, so I don't know if they're still there now. It was a year or two ago. I think they have a 3-year term. Right? So it's a possibility, but what's the point in him, even if that person gets fined and sacked, stands down? I think it's probably nearly 3 years ago now. Even if Galloway he redid it, I mean, you could say, you could have a case now for saying that you're not scrapping it, because the election that was run for the last person was illegitimate, and you have to do the whole thing again, because it was spoiled by the BBC and Martina Croxtall and Kirklees Council. And you have to have the whole thing again. And they might have to postpone the cancellation of the ward because the actual election was done illegitimately. Although you've got to call it, apparently, according to this act, within a certain amount of time. Unless there is any other reason to say not, like, if it was me, I've been ill for all that period of time. I've been ill, and you can have legal proceedings can be postponed if someone's been ill. I don't know if George Galloway has been ill or not. But anyone would be ill if they've been treated like that by the BBC. Why didn't the Crown prosecution? It was broadcast on the BBC. It was broadcast on the BBC. Why didn't if any police officer in West Yorkshire or a Crown prosecutor in West Yorkshire saw that broadcast and did not call it out, not knowing any, the Representation of the People Act, this is like, Fawlty Towers. This is like Max Hill. With Angela Ditchfield claiming that he doesn't know anything. Well, I'm starting to think the whole thing is set up now, like these are character actors, What is Max Hill doing going to the High Court when it's meant to be the Supreme Court, not the High Court? Anyway, with Angela Ditchfield when she got acquitted anyway, and why is he even... Is he playing the game? Is he kicking around? Is he being a team player? Have they been playing us the whole time? And if so, are they only going to get off with fines? Or are they all going to have to step down? this is the thing. These people are just like, this is the bad news part of it. We've got a government that only gets fined if it's naughty, if you manage to call it out, and is fearless and is corrupt because of that. But yet it's saying to us, it can't trust us with any immunities or rights because then there'll be chaos. And therefore it's abused us and illegally prosecuted us corruptly because we can't be trusted with such immunities, and but we're wanting to use them to actually get things through government to stop these people doing what they're doing because they're doing it corrupt, and only getting fines or having to stand down, and then another one pops up again like guess who, this is it. And this is why you're meant to be able to legitimately oppose these people on equal grounds, on equal terms, on equal standing, with equal arms and equal defence. If I was Galloway, I would want to know, if the time's passed, in the Petitions Elections Acts, for taking it to the Supreme Court. Well, I'll say, why did the Crown Prosecutor, if it had been like, let's say, Kirklees Council take these notices down and no one noticed, or if, someone did cheating on the ballots and no one knew about it and then they just found out about it, that was leaving it a bit late. But, this is the reason why you're not allowed to broadcast something like Rees-Mogg, which affects people in elections. But the thing is, Galloway's on there himself. He's got his own show, which is all about politics. It's a bit joke. But the thing is, I don't know what Galloway's programme was doing at that time. I don't know if his show had got that big or if people were even watching it. According to this act, it is any broadcast that can influence or potentially influence elections and referendums. God knows what they were talking about during the European one, Parliament one. Mogg can't be on there, that's for certain. Galloway's not actually elected at the moment. It suggests that no one can influence. The council have been publishing all these blueprint things all over, trying to push their cause as well. But I think that Croxtall thing is worse because the BBC actually pretend to be impartial. You see, Galloway isn't a presenter, and in Galloway's defence, although he's got experience, he I don't think he's trained by the BBC or anything like that, and he doesn't claim to be impartial. I mean, his channel is promoting he's a political party leader, isn't he? So he's promoting his party cause. He's a leader of the Workers' Party. Sorry, he's got his own party. But things that he says possibly could influence. But he would have fought more from the BBC. And then Tracy Brabin's popping up with her adverts on YouTube all over the place. She is the candidate, but apparently she can give a lot of people lifts in a vehicle as well. I've always been driven. She knows all. See, that was the first opening line. I've always been driven. She knows you can have a vehicle with a sign on it to say that you're petitioning for something in this. But yet these people have done nothing for us in our campaigns, and their political parties are winning and beating us in our own causes, particularly in objecting against housing builds and all these things. No one's challenging all these things. So the good news and the bad news is that the bad news is that a lot of these people are protected, and the good news is that we are as well. And we a lot of people should get a compensation and payouts really, and you could use that money really for political causes. But the worst thing is 38 Degrees, and YouTube, they claim to be doing things by the book, but, 38 degrees get really serious, like, we'll be in trouble with Parliament, if these signatures are dodgy, as if it's, like, really serious and important, when, no, or you only get fined the Supreme Court, you don't get charged with any criminal offences, and they aren't the ones, if they want to call out something's done illegitimately, then they have a right to get it looked at by the Supreme Court, and it gets checked anyway. What you're doing is, if you think the checking, when it gets checked by the proper authority, is done legitimate, or any other part of it, I don't like 38 degrees, the way they do this whole, you give them loads of money, like, to sponsor the website, but they pick and choose which campaigns they support. That can't be right. There's got to be something wrong about that, and something with the communications. They're checking the communications. It says that you can post one communication to each person for free for election and referendum. But Royal Mail can't obstruct it. The thing with 38 degrees is they're checking all the messages you send. What are they checking them for? They don't have a right to intervene in a message that's been sent to one person over a campaign, And then you've got Paul Groves, who's meant to be the director of YouTube, who are issuing videos. YouTube are issuing videos that you can't influence, elections. You can't break the process. But it turns out that it might be more than that. It turns out that you might actually not be able to influence people in them, which would be near impossible to enforce. I don't know how you'd enforce that. It would be extremely difficult. But then there would be a lot of political people getting taken off there, and with political rights. But there are political things that have a right to be on there, like Class F has a right, which is he has a right to be on there and not be taken off. It turns out other things shouldn't be. Apparently, you can use Class F in order to share something through Parliament Committee, standing orders and other acts to get the referendum, and they can't obstruct you doing that. Once you've got it, then other people, political, can't go on there to influence other people, right? Do you understand? So it's like, I have enforcement to share, including online and digital, and advertise without YouTube or 38 degrees hindering or obstructing. If I achieve it and get it, and it goes to referendum, right, or there's an election, then any other political persons who might try and affect or sway the public aren't allowed to, right? So actually they're really failing us, and they're the one. I think they're the ones who are corrupt, and this is what everyone's been saying the whole time. With corrupt government, corrupt councillors. What they're doing is they're abusing party political agenda and failing independent persons, and in a way, that's what, isn't that ironic? When a candidate, anyone who's voting for his party, you can give them lifts, but not other people. But anyone else can only give someone a lift in their own household, and apparently, they can't have a sign on the vehicle or whatever. That'd be something for the coal miners when they were chucking stones at those coach loads of people who were, in the miners' strikes. So there's a few things there. It all needs looking at, but I know there's definitely something there now. I know that the special reasons in the driving acts. I know that there are, you can have a vehicle identified for a petition by putting a sign on it. And I know that you can petition and hand in for a referendum or election as well. And I know for sure that we can't be prosecuted by common law, but neither can the council, even if they've committed fraud, but things have to be redone or a rerun or whatsoever, and and so forth. But this definitely, for start, all my intuitions about it, I believe, are correct. Namely, 38 Degrees don't have a right to take people's petitions off the petitioner, and that they don't have a right to do any checking or intervention at all, because they're not the authority checking it. And if they want to call out that it's illegitimate to the authority that is responsible for checking it, then they can, if they want to get it taken to the Supreme Court, then they've got a right to call for that. But they don't intervene in the process of collecting signatures, you know. Also, you can use a vehicle and declare it. Over what extent it covers you depends what act of law you're using, because there are various acts of law depending whether it's criminal or civil, or and you have Highways Act as well, and then also, you know, there were questions about Galloway. There were questions about YouTube. You know, it's got a bit. They're saying that, you know, all these, Insulate Britain, they're saying that's all chaotic, and, you know, we can't have it because it's, you know, chaos. But what we've actually got is chaos on YouTube, because you've got chaos with what's been said about things that may be eventually going to election or referendum, and will affect those. Whether it's Lawrence Fox, whether it's Reclaim Party, George Galloway, whether it's MOG, whether it's, you know, BBC ITV, the YouTube, you know, it's as much chaotic online, illegally, by the way. It says all these things are illegal, but not prosecuted common law, not that serious. Now, what I want to know is, why was Lawrence Fox prosecuted for free speech? Hold on a second. I want to check something. Oh, yeah, answerable. Answerable. Anyone who commits offence is answerable, but not to common law. And swearable. I would say this to Andrew Bridgen MP. Very few people are going to listen to this because it's nearly 2 hours. Andrew Bridgen MP, is Matt Hancock swearable? Is he in an unswearable position? Is he able to swear against Andrew Bridgen MP? You know, maybe he cannot harm his reputation as an MP in an election. But even if he does swear against, if he swears and harms the electoral success of Mr. Andrew Bridgen MP, I think he's gone to the Royal Court of Justice. But according to this, if this insult or this prosecution, this Royal Court of Justice that Andrew Bridgen has filed against Matt Hancock MP when he damaged and harmed his reputation, Matt Hancock was issued an unswearable insult. Apparently, you know, if he's bringing that under potential effect of an upcoming election, or a potential election that may take place at some point, then why didn't he got a prosecutor to bring charges well before the predicted date through the Supreme Court, and got a prosecutor to do it? Why have the public had to raise £80,000 or £100,000 for Andrew Bridgen, which apparently says he's going to give something to charity? It makes you wonder why we're raising private money for a Stonehenge case when we've got far in excess of the number of signatures for a local referendum, which is also cheaper, and by which we don't have to pay the postal costs by post, because one communication can be sent to each person for free if charged for Royal Mail, and the printing can be done very, very cheap now by laser copier and toner. Why are we paying for that? Why are these solicitors making lots of money? Lead day solicitors making, you know, thousands of pounds. Why is Andrew Bridgen taking thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds for the public for his case against Matt Hancock? and then giving it to charities who are benefiting money when Matt Hancock's affecting his electoral future success because, he is the MP now. Not only is he a future candidate, like I'm going to be on the ballot, I'm likely to be on the ballot, I'm the freaking MP. Why isn't the prosecutor done it to the Supreme Court as an offence under here and fined Matt Hancock and then Matt Hancock stepped down? These are the questions. Money, 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 money. Yeah, I like Andrew Bridgen, I support him, but again, a man who is very knowledgeable in he's called the government out on the whole COVID thing. He's got a science background, a business background. He's an elected MP. Where are his particulars for representation of the people, for elections, petitions, referendums? And why has he not knocked Rees-Mogg off there when Rees-Mogg is the public enemy number one? George Galloway's borderline. He's a party leader. I guess you can do party political broadcasts, which is declared as such. The Reclaim Party's name seems like Rees-Mogg and the Tories want to claim the media back for politicians when they don't really have it. It's all wrong. And then YouTube are giving false statements, I think, by saying that, it's American law, isn't it? Saying that, you can't intervene or spoil. No, actually, it says that in many cases you can't influence as well. I think the non-profits are allowed to support a campaign or oppose one by doing an action, by donating, or by actually themselves laying a bill, or by voting, or supporting or signing something. That non-profit's 501(c)(3), it can support or oppose any campaign as a non-profit for monetary. You can give donations. They can't intervene, but that's not broadcasting, though, is it? And if they can support or oppose, that means they can do petitions. But when it comes to elections and referendums, they can only support or oppose by what rules are additionally there for that as well. So, that 501(c). I really think Andrew Bridgen is also wrong as well. I think that he's fleeced public money. He didn't take money off us when we voted for him. Well, you could give money to his campaign, but if Matt Hancock's broken the law, defamation. It's not defamation, is it? It's not defamation. What Andrew Bridgen, he was swearable. He was an swearable person. He was able to swear, about Andrew. He used foul, damaging language towards Andrew Bridgen's position in campaigns. So that is specifically. You see, why has he gone through the Royal Court of Justice anyway? Why don't you prosecute Matt Hancock? Because he can't. Because it can't be prosecuted by common law. But why has he gone to the Royal Courts of Justice, You got judicial conduct investigations, but that's against, the thing is, judicial conduct investigations is against people in, the Petitions Committee as well. That's what I'm calling. I'm saying that the Petitions Committee, acting under standing orders, are acting as an investigative judicial body, like an inquiry. Now, the thing is, Parliament is a jurisdiction. It has a privileges committee for Andrew Bridgen. It has a privileges committee for Matt Hancock. Why haven't they got the Crown Prosecutor to go to the Supreme Court on behalf of Mr. Bridgen? Why is he pulling up more money from the public again? Money from the taxpayer. All they're taking this money from us. They're getting all these monies, but never once has any of these persons sat on television and told the truth. Common law is not to be used against people petitioning the government, the right to petition, right? Why haven't they said that? Yet, Lawrence Fox can't even say that in his own police interview when he's the leader of a political party. He doesn't even mean he was capable of getting a bank account. This is a party that we may have to be relying upon. The Conservative Party didn't take 2 seconds. Now, I've also now issued, I am acting through proper judicial process against YouTube to compel them to give my evidence for my channel. They're actually not allowed to take my channel down. It's illegal. And their policy is not applicable. Their policy is unlawful. Their policy is illegal against material that is declared for the purpose of promoting petitions and so forth. And, also, I've issued, they're also ignoring, proper legal documents as well, YouTube. So 38 Degrees, What else? Where else was there something else as well? Oh yeah, the BBC. Yeah, the BBC are the cause of a lot of everyone's problems because the BBC influence people. The BBC say things or say people's names which causes adverse reactions or shock or panic attack. The BBC also, they've got Nick Freeman on there telling us about illegal road signs, and then when people causes people to act, then they're not getting their rights upheld when they're pursuing it. The BBC, Croxtall really. I really think Galloway should be looking at that constituency now being illegitimate. I don't know if the 3 years are quite up. Last time I looked, it was a year before. I think there might be another 12 months left on that constituency. I think that they took his voting material down and they defamed him on television. Croxtall said that he had nothing to do with the area at all whatsoever. That was she claimed it was a fact. She said, "You haven't got anything to do with this area. Why are you coming for election?" Well, that's not impartial. She stated a fact that he has got nothing to do with that area when he was the MP for Bradford. So he has got something to do with the area. He was a member of Parliament in West Yorkshire. On those two things is severely failed. But then yet Tracy Brabin is through Labour getting highly successful. These people, these political parties are cheating, and the council as well. You see, the council persons need to be prosecuted by a prosecutor at the Supreme Court for that. Individual members of the council, the street team need to be in front of the Supreme Court, who took the notices down, the councillors who directed it, the newspaper, the BBC, Croxtall herself. They all need to be prosecuted and fined in the Supreme Court, although I don't think by common law. Why? Because they've got this, it's in connection with voting elections and petitions, which is why I think the whole thing applies similarly to House of Commons petitions as well. I think Galloway should do something. I'd like to see Galloway make the prosecutor bring a case to the Supreme Court that the current candidate is there illegitimately. The whole election was cheated. I mean, look at the Donald Trump thing. His joke, really. I think that it should cancel out the end of the term, and I think the Electoral Commission, who are changing all the borders in the electoral areas, I think that all that should be written off. I think that should be cancelled. I think it should be written off. I think George Galloway, I think they should have a re-election in Batley Spen. And I think that they should redo it, and they should all be fined. Everyone should be fined. And I think Galloway, I think they should have to extend that. They should have to that electoral area should have to be extended The Electoral Commission should have to extend it. The Supreme Court should rule, and George Galloway should have a chance of being that councillor there for Batley Spen. Although I don't know if he'll want to do it now because he's doing his programme, and I don't know whether or not he can be the lead. It will be difficult to be the leader of the Workers' Party and not be influencing electors, having a channel like that, and be an MP, not MP, sorry, a councillor. I don't know if George Galloway wants to be a councillor. He seems to be more happier being a would-be statesman, really, kind of like sort of Tony Blair, but I think that it would take up too much of his time being a local councillor, but I think it would help him out and his party, would help his party out. But the best thing would just be to have it done properly. This is what I think is correct. Anyway, I'm certain. And Kirklees Council definitely would very, very much be up in the Supreme Court for corruption charges, even if they get fined for it. They're going bankrupt anyway. There are issues over the whole online media thing. It's possible that Galloway, he shouldn't have had. Also, Twitter shouldn't have taken his Workers' Party Twitter down either. Surely there should be some fines or actions for that as well. It's 38 Degrees need to be fined as well for taking petitions down. They aren't a jurisdiction authority. It's not there. It's nothing to do with them to check those petitions. They're there to publish them and make them available to the public and no more. And they've chosen something where